The airlines took the federal government to court to keep information hidden from you, and they won. Today I reveal 8 deliberate tactics that airlines use to take money out of your pockets and how you can outsmart them. Delta is being sued right now, and the whole situation is pretty spicy. When passengers went online to request a cash refund for canceled or eligible flights, Delta's refund page had the travel credit option pre-selected. The cash refund option was buried on a different part of the page, so most people just grabbed the credit and moved on. But here's where things get juicy. According to the report, Delta acknowledges that the cash refund is worth twice as much as the travel credit that they're steering you towards. So they know. They've even quantified it, and they're still defaulting you to the worst option. That credit expires in 12 months and it only works on Delta. If you switch airlines, get sick, or don't fly within the next year, then that money is gone. In fact, airlines hold hundreds of millions of dollars of unused credits each year. The takeaway is that whenever an airline puts a refund screen in front of you, do not trust whatever option is pre-selected. If you know you're eligible for cash, then look for cash and don't stop looking until you find it. Next, the airlines actually took the government to court to keep fees hidden from you, and they won. Here's what happened. The DOT passed a rule that would have required airlines to show you the real total of a flight up front, not the tempting $79 teaser fare. They would be required to put the actual price with fees included before you start going through the checkout process. The airlines sued to block this, and last year, the appeals court sided with them. The argument was that showing you the full price before you book would be, quote, too confusing. If the new law had passed, the government estimates it would have saved travelers $543 million a year in surprise fees. That's roughly $1.5 million every single day that passengers pay because the real numbers are hidden until they're already committed. If we're being honest though, I do kind of see the airline's confusion argument though. If you're looking at 30 flight options on a screen and each has 5 or 6 fee columns per row, that could get overwhelming. The question is, how do you show fees simply without hiding them like airlines do? Anyway, I'm curious what you think, so drop it in the comments. If you were designing the booking screen, how would you handle it? And do you think showing all the fees up front actually helps, or does it add to the confusion? Okay, now let's talk about the fee that's hiding in plain sight. Budget carriers advertise fares that are so low that they feel like a mistake. I've seen Frontier list New York to Miami for under $40. People book it and then show up at the airport with a carry-on, and that's where the math starts to fall apart. I checked Frontier's own bag fee checker tool, which depends on your flight. For the flight I checked, a carry-on costs $69 if you buy it when you book, $79 if you do it before check-in, and $99 at the boarding gate in each direction. So your ticket was $39 and your last minute carry-on just cost you $99. That escalating price structure is not an accident. It's designed to get you to lock in early, and it works, especially for passengers who assume that all tickets include a carry-on. The only thing that's free on these carriers is a personal item that fits under the seat in front of you. Everything else costs extra. Honestly, the only way to fully opt out of this game is to stop checking bags, stop paying for carry-ons, and travel with a personal item only, at least for these budget tickets. That might sound crazy, but I've actually packed personal item only for a multi-week trip. The trick is to pack multifunctional clothes that work in all settings and that never smell bad. I personally use Unbound Merino clothes to do this, and I've been wearing their clothes way before they ever sponsored one of my videos. Merino wool is lightweight, anti-wrinkle, and literally does not smell bad even if you wear it for a week straight. The material is antibacterial, so not only does it not smell, but it actually stays clean. That means you can literally pack half as much, which makes traveling personal item only a realistic option. Unbound Merino clothes are the softest merino wool that I've tested, and they're not itchy like some other merino brands. I also love that the fit is actually good and it doesn't look like travel gear. It's stylish enough to not embarrass my wife on a dinner date, but comfy enough to sleep in on a plane. My favorites are the jogger pants and the travel hoodie. They both pack down tiny, but still do a good job of regulating your temperature in both hot and cold climates. You can grab a 10% discount off your first Unbound Merino purchase using the QR code on the screen or link in the description with discount code Mitch10. Big thanks to our friends at Unbound Merino for sponsoring this video. Here's something that most people don't realize about their frequent flyer miles until it's too late. The rules can change after you've already earned them. Think about it this way. Say you put $500 into a bank savings account. Then one day, quietly, the bank updates their fine print so that your $500 now only buys $350 worth of stuff. You'd probably say something like, Ah, heck no. But that's exactly what's been happening with airline loyalty programs, which many travelers include in their budget planning as if it were cash. The government actually had to open a formal investigation into all 4 major airlines at the same time for this. The airlines were quietly moving the goalposts on miles that passengers had already earned, raising how many points a flight costs, adding blackout dates, and changing expiration rules on points that are already sitting in someone's account. And most people don't find out until they go to redeem. So if you're hoarding a bunch of points and miles, you might want to rethink your strategy, because the longer you wait, the less they're going to be worth. A few months ago, we had to fly from Panama to Colombia with an oversized, hyperactive baby. My wife and I had planned on tag teaming the baby and letting her lay across both of our laps. But instead of seating us together, the airlines split us apart, which meant baby was on mom's lap, crammed in the middle seat between 2 unhappy passengers. Long story short, the flight sucked. The other passengers were annoyed and we were embarrassed. And here's the thing. The airlines did this on purpose. It's by design. Several airlines charge families extra to pick seats together. They frame it as a premium, something that you're upgrading to. But even if you do pay extra, some families are still split apart. Like one family with a 3-year-old and a 7-year-old who paid for Southwest Premium Choice Fare specifically so they could sit together. At the gate, Southwest split them into 2 pairs and moved them to the very last seats of the plane. And when the family pushed back, Southwest pointed to the contract. It says, the choice fare includes the ability to select a standard seat, but it does not guarantee a specific seat assignment. What makes this especially hard to swallow is that it's not like airlines have no choice not to do this. Alaska, American, JetBlue, and even Frontier all seat children under 13 with a family member for free. The airlines that charge you are making a deliberate choice to do so. As of 2026, there is no federal rule requiring airlines to sit children next to their parents. There's been talk of one, but nothing is passed. It's no secret that airlines overbook flights to make a profit. They just assume a certain number of people will oversleep and that'll be more money in their pocket. But when everyone actually does show up, it puts them in a little bit of a pickle. Then they have to turn to their sneaky psychological tactics and start asking volunteers to get bumped. They always start their offer low, a $200 flight voucher, maybe $300. Usually it doesn't go much higher than that because someone usually caves and takes the offer. But most people don't realize that if nobody volunteers, that offer keeps going up and up and up until enough people volunteer or they reach the legal amount to bump people involuntarily, which is way higher than most people think. Recently, 3 American Airlines passengers scored $4,500 each in travel vouchers by voluntarily bumping their trip home from Greece by 1 day. Now, this is an extreme case because most times another passenger will cave way before this. But in most cases, the airlines are actually happy whenever they find volunteers, even if they have to pay. Because the second you accept anything at all, any voucher or any amount, you've legally volunteered to give up your seat. And that word voluntarily wipes out your ability to receive involuntary payments, which under federal law can be up to 400% of your one-way fare depending on your delay, capped at $2,150 in cash, not vouchers. Most times airlines follow these voluntary, involuntary rules, but some passengers have reported airlines doing some sketchy things to get out of paying the full price. There's an actual documented case where American Airlines was accused of labeling a bumped passenger and his young son as voluntary, specifically to avoid paying the $4,300 they legally owed him. The man allegedly reports that they would not let him board the plane and told him, "I know it wasn't voluntary, but we can give you this $500 flight voucher for giving up your seat." According to the passenger, the agent admitted it was involuntary, but they tricked him into accepting a flight credit because he didn't know what he was actually entitled to. This actually happened to me as well in Colombia. I had a flight to Rio to see the Olympics. I got involuntary bumped and they just gave me a $300 flight credit and a night in a hotel until the next flight went out. In Colombia, the passenger rights aren't as good as in the US or in Europe, but I was still entitled to cash and they tricked me with a credit. So before you accept anything at the gate, ask this one question. Am I being asked to volunteer or am I being involuntary denied boarding? That question changes the whole situation. Next is a situation you might have been in before. You're at your gate and an announcement says that there's a 20-minute delay. 20 minutes passes and then they announce another 20-minute delay, then another, until you've been sitting there for over an hour and maybe your flight even ends up getting canceled. Instead of admitting a long delay, they just update you with 20 more minutes on loop indefinitely. Recently, my mom took her first flight in 20 years to come visit me and her granddaughter down in Colombia, and the airlines pulled this one on her. She had business class seats, so she could have waited comfortably in the lounge during the delays, but since they kept drip fitting them, she was scared to leave the gate. Now, I want to be fair here because airlines always aren't trying to lie to you about delays. Sometimes they genuinely don't know how long it'll be, but the result for you is the same either way. You're sitting there waiting on information that may never come while your window to rebook or move around is closing. Here's what you can do in this situation. The moment your flight shows any delay, whip open the airline's app and find the inbound aircraft. That plane has to arrive before yours can leave, so its status can sometimes give you a hint on how long the delay will actually be. Next, don't always trust the airport luggage scales. In Miami and Fort Lauderdale, 9 out of 41 scales failed inspection in one investigation. And a report out of Newark, New Jersey put the failure rate around 27%. That means there's a real chance that the scale at the check-in counter tells you that your bag's overweight when it really isn't. So if you're about to get hit with a $100 overweight fee and something feels a little bit off, ask the agent to weigh your bag on a different scale. You can also look at the scale itself and see if you can find an inspection sticker to see the last time that it was calibrated, but I don't see one on these scales. I don't think airlines mess with their scales on purpose just to charge you more, but some airports don't require their scales to be as recalibrated as frequently, and that could cost you big time. The good news is that even if the scales are accurate and your bags are overweight, there are still some clever tricks you can use to avoid paying expensive fees. I share all those luggage hacks in this video right here, so watch it next to avoid ever having to pay an overweight luggage fee again. Like, subscribe, do the things. Love you. Bye-bye.